Thanks for tuning in to Quillbilly Garage. What you are looking at here is a 1933 Ford three-window coupe. This car has been in my family since 1955, and there's quite a good story to go along with the whole history of this car and my family members that used it and drove it. I've been putting off starting this series partly because this car's so special to me that I wanted to do the perfect production of it and excellent documentation of the process. Well, I've gathered some video content over the past couple of years and never got to putting the pieces together to put something out there on YouTube. So I finally decided that I might as well get some content out there. I can always come back later and do a full story on the car, showing pictures from the past and things like that. So anyway, we'll get started. This car, again, my granddad bought this in 1955, drove it to work, and my dad got it from him in 1957 and drove it to college. Parked it in 1961, and it sat for many years out in my grandparents' yard. And then eventually in the early 80s, my dad built this garage and brought the car here. So the restoration of the car started in 2002. A lot of work was done. Body was taken off, frame sandblasted and painted, and parts gathered. Then the project kind of came to a halt in about 2005, and then picked back up on it in 2019. Done quite a few things to it since then. Also some long periods of stagnation while I've been working on other things. So we'll go ahead and get started, and I'll put content out there whenever I've got it for this car. Probably be few and far between at the moment, but hopefully in the next year or two, we might pick up and make some great progress on it. So thanks for watching, and please stay tuned for more episodes on this car. Today's project on the 1933 Ford three-window coupe is to install a temporary dashboard. Let me explain why I want to install a temporary dashboard. I recently installed a rebuilt steering box. And I'd very much like to get this car to where all the mechanicals are together. I could steer it, move it around. Once I get the engine in, if I got it fired up, I could drive it around the yard. As you can see here, the steering shaft comes up. What you don't see is there's a tube that goes down over the steering shaft, a support that then mounts to the dashboard and has the ignition switch in that. So without a dashboard, there's no way to support the steering column. If I put a steering wheel on it and start using it to move the car around, the steering shaft would maybe bend, the steering column shaft might bend, might do some damage to the steering box. The reason that I'm installing a temporary dash instead of a permanent one is simply this. I haven't painted it yet. And even if I had, I wouldn't want to put a nicely painted dash in this car at this point in the restoration. Fortunately, I have a 1934 Ford dashboard that's been butchered that I can put in there temporarily. It won't matter if it gets scratched up. So here's the temporary dashboard. So you can see somebody butchered a hole in the middle there and butchered up around where some of the gauges go. The only difference between a 1933 dashboard and a 1934 is that the gauge cluster that we're looking at here on a 33, that is a removable panel, and on the 34 it's stamped into the same piece of sheet metal. Now I've got the dashboard screwed in place. Not much holding it in, really. On each side, there, left and right side, there is a machine screw with a lock nut on the back side. I'm sure a lock nut's not factory correct, but I'm not using correct fasteners at this point. When I get the finished product in here, I'll use the right appearing screws. So, like I say, one screw and nut onto the left and right side of the dash. And then up here behind where the windshield would go, there are 6 number 10 machine screws holding the dashboard in. Point of interest, when I went to grab a screwdriver to install it, I happened upon this one with a little orange paint on the handle. When I was a kid, there was a elderly man who was kind to me, and I'd go hang out at his house sometimes, and he'd give me tools now and then. And he would paint his tools with a little bit of orange paint on them. That was so if he ever loaned one or lost one, he would see it and know that it was his. So whenever I find a tool in my toolbox, or my dad's toolbox with orange paint on it, it reminds me of that man that used to hang out with me and give me tools. See this void up here, right here where my hand is? That is where the windshield crank mechanism goes. The dashboard will have to come back out to install this, but that knob sticks through a hole in the dashboard. And then they're not in place, but where the windshield mounts up here, it's a hinge. You can crank the windshield out for ventilation. This is the tube that slips down over the steering column shaft. You can see these holes up toward the top. That's where the support, also more officially called the column drop, mounts, and then screws up here on the underside of the dashboard. That little item right there is where the locking pin goes in to lock the steering when you have the key out. This is the column drop that mounts to the bottom of the dashboard. The steering column tube slides through that hole, and that's what supports the steering column. You can see inside the hole there, that's the pin that comes out to lock the steering column. The way this works, you put the key in, turn it, and it pulls the pin out of the steering column, and it enables this switch here so that you can select from go from off to on. Then the starter button is actually a button on the floor that you press with your foot. What I'm not looking forward to is installing the column drop and the column tube, sliding that column tube all the way down this the drop without scratching the new paint on it. I'm going to save that for another day. Thanks for tuning into Quillbilly Garage. I hope you enjoyed this little progress report on the restoration of my 1933 Ford 3-window coupe. Thank you.